Joining us right now, our dear friend Carol Roth, who she says she's a recovering investment banker, and she has a brand new bestseller out. You will own nothing, and that's Your War with New Financial World Order and How to Fight Back. Carol, congratulations! And I mean, you've been right, and I was just, I was perusing some of the write ups about it, and it's like there's a stark divide. All the people that can do math are like, yep, this is right. And the people that want to deny the mathematical reality are saying, well, this is fear mongering. And, this is from someone who doesn't like masking and, thinks that EVs are bad. And that's not what your point is at all. I mean, you're talking about everything that all of these larger entities are doing in order to essentially control American wealth.
So first of all, I have to thank you for lending your name to this book. And I think part of the reason why you like the book cover, which I'm going to show the people who are actually watching, is not only the front awesome, but Dana Loesch is on the
Oh,
back
love
here.
the
So
back. Also my
that's
favorite.
so super cool. But yeah, so I didn't even know, I stumbled into that one review. I think that you were referencing, someone sent it to me this morning. I'd never even heard of the outlet. This outlet is so credible that instead of linking me with the two books that I actually wrote, they linked me with the children's book author, Carol Roth. So it says that I wrote like, you will own nothing and go to bed, sweetheart, and something like that, which makes no sense.
I love it.
And it really made, it was really just annoying to me. It was clear they didn't read the book because the whole point of this book was to take the conspiracy element out of it.
Right.
And they just scanned through and they saw, oh, well, she mentioned Glenn Beck and Tucker Carlson, so that must be bad. And it's like, okay, but I also mentioned Joe Biden and the Fed and, all of these things that, in their own words, you've skipped over that entire scenario. And there was no sort of argument there. It wasn't like, oh, they don't, Wall Street is buying up houses. Here, let me try and explain why that's a good thing that 1 out of every 5 houses is going to a corporate investor instead of a single family when it's the largest asset on, household balance sheets in the US. It was just like, oh, well, she likes these people, so it's bad.
Yeah, you
And
immediately have to be discredited. It's like this quasi guilt by association. Well, she mentioned this person, so she must be as bad. Our friend Carol
right.
Roth, her new book "You Will Own Nothing," really gets into. I mean, it is a scary vision of the future. It's not a vision of the future. It's a scary observation as to what is going to happen in the future if we continue on the path that we are on now. And Kane and I were just talking on break, for instance, just about, I saw the headline about, whether the Fed's going to consider increasing rates again because government can't stop spending. And we're talking about
Right.
trying to control inflation, and they're thinking about maybe pulling the trigger sooner rather than later. And we're in this horrible cycle of the government's continuing to spend. No one can afford anything. Our wages aren't keeping up with that difference. How high are the rates going to go? I mean, where is this going to, by the time 2024 gets here, are we going to have anything left?
So, the Fed has an interesting scenario where they have to balance making sure that the banking system doesn't collapse, as well as trying to control inflation. And the reality is that inflation on a year over year basis has been coming down because it was at such a high level before. Plus, we've gotten an assist because there has been a concern over a global slowdown. So the price of oil has come down. And so that's been a huge part of this entire story. So, this could potentially go up. Some, I think that they will probably maybe go up a little bit more, then pause again. But I think the wild card really is the price of oil. We had a very mild winter last year. And so that meant that, Europe and the US, we didn't have this massive desire and demand for oil over and above sort of the norm. That's not a strategy. That was a gift. Nobody did anything to fix that cycle. So if we get a cold winter this year, I think all bets are off. So we're just going back and betting on the weather. But the thing, going back to this conspiracy element and what you were talking about, things like the fact that our public debt to GDP is at 125%, and the IMF has said that the sort of place where that becomes unsustainable is like 70 to 80%. The fact that the Treasury and the CBO have said we're on an unsustainable fiscal path, like, are they conspiracy theorists too? Because I've cited where they say that. It's clear that the Fed has not held the dollar stable for the good of either the US or the global economy. And that has caused the reserves to go down on a global basis, de-dollarization on the reserve level, that some of the BRICS countries are looking to start a new currency. This is in the news every day, mainstream media, corporate press. So where is the conspiracy element? Joe Biden on the White House's website said to the Business Roundtable in a speech, there's going to be a new world order out there and we've got to lead it, and explains the historical cycles we're in and the fact that we've been in the pole position for about 80 years, but that doesn't last forever. And before us, it was Britain, and before Britain, it was the Dutch. Like, this is not conspiracy. This is a history. So the idea that they don't want to address these issues and just brush them under the table and try to label it conspiratorial is almost as concerning as the things that are being perpetrated against us.
Yeah, completely. That is, and you're right. I remember we were actually talking about some of that, those BRIC nations with their own currency, and the effect that that's going to have. We're talking with our friend Carol Roth, whose new book, You Will Own Nothing, Your War with a New Financial World Order and How to Fight Back. One of the things that we talked about, I think it was like maybe one of the last times last time you were on, was the Fed Now. That Fed Now system that's going to, faster payment. They act like it's going to be this huge help. That I think goes into effect this week.
So it's coming into effect. I'm not as concerned about that as some of the other people are. And I think we talked about this last time, because I do think that's more of the settlement and payment. We already use wire transfers and ACH, but I am very concerned about the central bank digital currency, which they did a pilot program with the New York Fed and 12 different financial institutions. That has been completed, and they put out a report. It was at the wholesale level, but they said, oh, this is fantastic. And so once we go down that rabbit hole, then you get into retail. The G7 has come out with coordinated retail-facing CBDC principles. So these are not the actions that you take if this is something that nobody's thinking about and is entirely off the table. And that's really scary, both from a direct basis, just the further centralization of the currency, the potential for a too big to fail meltdown, and all of the potential attacks that are going to happen because we have no decentralization within that system, but also in terms of our agency and our freedom and what they could do to manipulate and control the currency. And, particularly as we marry it with things like social credit, which we have seen on an informal basis throughout COVID, and how that impacted our livelihoods. A lot of people think about social credit and that freedom of framework, but they don't think about the economic freedom, the property rights, and how that was violated, whether it was your social standing, whether it was taking your job, whether it was shutting down your business. If you were in Canada and part of the trucker convoy, they froze your bank accounts. So, that kind of a social credit implementation. You said something bad on Twitter. Now, not only do you not have access to social media, but maybe they shut off access to you accessing your money and being able to pay for things you need to live. So
there was a headline about Nigel Farage just this morning. That was one of the first stories that I saw. His bank closed his account because he retweeted Ricky Gervais. Of all the things, he retweeted Ricky, which, he's I could think of a million more comedians that are probably more controversial than Ricky Gervais, but that's apparently what did Nigel Farage in. His bank closed his account.
Yeah, one that he had been with for a very long period of time, ostensibly. And so now you have, these infrastructure institutions where you don't have a lot of free choice, and they're really part of, making sure that you can participate in society, now weighing in on whether you're part of right think or wrong think, and the implications around that. Not to mention, we talk about the home, as we have these corporations who are now competing with you to buy a home and rent you the American dream. One of the conversations I had is, imagine that was social credit. So not only have they taken away, your opportunity to generate wealth, but now you're under somebody else's purview, who, by the way, is probably backed by one of these big banks that's, touting ESG and whatever. And now you do something that is, quote unquote, bad social credit. Do you lose your housing? I mean, these are things that I don't think people have thought about. If you had talked about this 10 years ago, I might have thought it was far-fetched. But having done this research for You Will Own Nothing and going through the last 3 years, I don't think we can dismiss that anymore.
And to your point, we're talking with our friend Carol Roth, her new book, You Will Own Nothing, which is out this week. I don't remember if I told you this out today. I don't remember if I told you this before. When we sold our last house, it was the first house we bought when we moved to Texas, and this was a number of years ago. And this was the first time I've ever seen anything like this. And this was before everyone was talking about BlackRock buying up properties. We had Texas a very competitive housing market because everybody's coming in from California. We had all these offers on our house, and it was weird because the highest offer, they were going above what was offered, and no strings, nothing. But it was a company.
Right.
Everyone else was a family, and I was not familiar with that. And I'm not like into Trump levels of real estate or anything. And I know what I know and I know what I don't. But I thought that's kind of weird. I've never seen that, and it freaked me out. And I didn't want to sell it to him.
So this is a thing that you have to do, and you have to fight back. So the reason why you're not familiar with this is because it didn't exist before 2010.
Ooh.
Before the Fed manipulated monetary policy and gave all of this cheap, easy money to Wall Street in droves and on pallets, basically. They drove up every asset class. They didn't have anywhere else to put their money, so they went, oh, maybe we'll buy homes. That sounds great. And so that enabled this transfer of wealth from Main Street to Wall Street. And now you have these companies, they're coming and they're buying up more than 1 out of every 5 homes in the United States as of the end of last year. And they don't want to fix it up and sell it to the next person. They want to rent you the American dream. They want to take that generational wealth opportunity away from you, and they want to transfer that to Wall Street. And these companies, they've got tens of thousands of homes. One of the things I did in the book is I just went to their financial filings, the 10Ks and the annual reports, and I just showed their language. Again, apparently that's a scaremongering of conspiracy theory according to the reviews. But I told you what they said, and they said they go after the middle class because they have the jobs and the ability to pay. And this is a golden opportunity and a once in a generation asset class. I mean, it's unbelievable. And so this is a fantastic way for you to fight back. If you own a house, yes, I want you to get the best price possible, but maybe don't get that extra couple $1,000s and don't sell it to a corporation.
That's a great point. I mean, it is amazing all of the different ways that they are conspiring to, and I love how you put it. I mean, you can rent the American dream. You don't get to own it because you own nothing, but you get to rent the American dream. This is a must-read book. I'm so happy that you wrote this book, and I'm so grateful that you're sharing your expertise on this with everyone else and coming on and sharing it with us as well. Carol Roth, You Will Own Nothing. Go and get this book if you have not purchased it already. Get a couple copies. Give it to someone who's mathematically less inclined than you, because we have an economic illiteracy, an epidemic of illiteracy as it relates to economics in this country. Carol Roth, congratulations. Thank you so much. Good to see you.
Yes, thank you for your support. Remember, the elites want you to own nothing, but Dana and I want you to own everything. So Get the plan to fight back.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.